Welcome to Playmakers Talk Show, where business owners, professionals, and entrepreneurs gather to discover playmaking ideas for success. Your host is internationally recognized speaker, facilitator, and author Steve Klein, who sits down with fascinating playmakers who have made themselves and their company successful. Steve will introduce you to CEOs and executives who discuss their playmaking path toward success. And now, it's time to meet this show's playmaker. Here's your host, Steve Klein.
Confucius said, "The gods cannot help those who don't seize opportunities." Welcome to Playmakers Talk Show. I'm Steve Klein. In the studio today is a guest who seizes opportunities. Today's Playmaker has co-founded 3 companies since 2005. With us today is a president and founder whose vision statement is caring for people above all else we do. This great Playmaker is Will Howard. Will is president and founder of Senderra. Will has over 15 years' experience in sourcing, structuring, and managing equity investments. He is the president and founder of Senderra RX Specialty Pharmacy and founder and managing partner of Cibolo Capital Partners. Senderra is a national specialty pharmacy serving patients with challenging and ongoing medical conditions through provision of specialty medications, clinical expertise, and support services. As founder of Senderra Specialty Pharmacy, Will and partner Win Purifoy are instrumental in ensuring Senderra's people, culture, and day-to-day business operations, helping them retain Senderra's vision and commitment to providing people the kind of care that matters. Will, welcome to Playmakers Talk Show.
Thanks for having me.
You also run a venture capital company. How did that company put together Senderra?
Well, that's a great question. So I kind of joke about it and I say we started Senderra in 2009 from a business plan point of view, and we launched in 2010. But what we all have to remember is that there was a 2007 and a 2008 before 2009, 2010. And
there was something going on there.
Exactly, and that's when the market crashed. And so at that time, I was focusing on real estate investments, and Wynn and I shared an office space together. And so we got out of the real estate stuff that we were doing and started working on operating companies together. And so one of Wynn's friends, Tom Bohannon, who is our senior vice president of sales now, was a sales rep for a big drug company. And he told us about the opportunity of specialty pharmacy. And so we spent a year investigating the marketplace and really going to physicians and asking them the question, if we built something that was different and unique, would you use it? And would you go through a workshopping process with us to create a physician-focused specialty pharmacy? And so that's how we started it.
So apparently there is a large need in the marketplace for specialty pharmacy. And talk about what that is. What is specialty pharmacy, and why is there such a need for the patients to have something like that?
Sure. So by definition, a specialty pharmacy is a pharmacy that focuses on what we call specialty medications. And by definition, they're very expensive. Most of them are biological drugs instead of pills. So they're injections that you take once a month or once a quarter or a year. And so the patient needs to be much more actively managed than going to a retail pharmacy.
And in many cases, these are not drugs they can pick up at their corner drugstore.
They can't, primarily because of their cost and because of the approvals that need to happen with their insurance company before they go on the drug. We like to say, the insurance companies want to make sure that you haven't tried the 5-cent pill before you go on the $40,000 a year medication, which makes sense.
Let's go to your background when we come back to Senderra in a moment. You graduated from SMU, you majored in English, you only minored in business. So why the switch? And originally, why did you major in English?
Well, I was actually a pre-med focus.
So there was some medical background there.
Yeah, I've always been interested in medicine. It was something that I thought that I wanted to do. I finished my coursework, took the MCAT, and in my junior spring semester said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so I hurried up and I got a business minor, but the reason I majored in English is because they don't let you major in pre-med anymore, thank goodness. And so I love to write, I enjoy to read, and so that was more of a personal thing than kind of a career thing, but it served me well in terms of knowing how to write and hopefully knowing how to communicate.
Well, let's talk more about Senderra being a specialty pharmacy. You apparently saw a need in the marketplace because you're not the only firm that does this.
Not at all.
There are many firms. What was that niche or hole you saw that needed to be filled?
Well, what we saw was that no one was really focusing on the physician in this whole equation. And so the specialty market has grown from $100 billion a year in 2010 to over $300 billion today.
Well, with all the baby boomers are growing older,
Exactly.
This is probably a continually growing industry.
Right. And so a lot of the focus has been on big macro level issues. How are you going to distribute it? How are you going to care for thousands and thousands of patients? But who was being left out there were the doctors and the nurses who were actually providing the care and writing the script in the first place. And because of the high cost of the medication, we already talked about the authorization that needs to happen, but also educating the patient, figuring out how the patient can afford the drug. All those things go into properly onboarding a patient. So some people think that the high cost of specialty medications is the real issue. That's not really the real issue. The real issue is that we're making an investment in people's health on a long-term basis. That's what the ROI is for specialty meds. So the worst thing that can happen is that you start people out in these specialty meds, they're not educated, they're not well equipped to take the drug, and they're not managed long-term, which means that the overall health investment that we've all made in them, they don't see from an outcome basis. And so that's really what we're here to do, is to provide those outcomes to patients by working with their physicians and kind of turning the time back, the clock back from a perspective to say the best healthcare is when you have three providers all working in tandem for the benefit of that one individual patient. And that's, if you can do that over and over again, then you can impact a population.
Interesting you said that, because I believe that many patients that don't need to take specialty drugs still don't get the support from their doctors or their pharmacy in terms of how they should take. I hear stories about people taking more than one medicine, and the doctors don't understand how there's interactions that shouldn't happen with that patient. But you are looking at all those things ahead of time.
Absolutely. So that's one of the tasks that our pharmacists do. It's part of our services to make sure that we see the entire gamut of what the patient is taking, and to look for drug interactions, and to look for safety concerns where those interactions could interfere with therapy.
Now, this could be medicine the patient has to take for the rest of their lives, and is also extremely expensive for them, potentially. So you are putting all this together to help the patient, help the doctors, and to help everybody. So they're working together on this.
Absolutely. So everyone has a different benefit structure and a design structure, but traditionally everyone has a copay too. And so we think that the number one thing around compliance is to manage the financial burden for the patient. That's the number one question that everyone asks first. Thankfully, there are charity foundations out there, as well as support programs that are funded by the pharma companies that make these drugs, that are readily available to both commercial and Medicare patients. And we just take the extra step to make sure that we bind all those services appropriately to each patient so that they can afford the medicine on a long-term basis.
Let me ask this question then, because you're working with the doctors and nurses and the big pharma companies. Would a patient call you, or would they always be going through the doctor to use your services?
Most of our referrals come straight from physicians, just because that's kind of the way it works. It's the same thing as if you went to the physician and you needed to go get blood work done, or you needed a colonoscopy. You're generally going where the doctor tells you to go. And so that's where really the service and being part of the process in the physician's office is so critical, because when they send a patient to Senderra, they know that they're going to get a consistent level of service every single time. And we also manage a huge amount of patients where we don't actually get the financial benefit of filling them. But we do all the work anyway, and then we find who can fill that patient, and we transfer it to that mandated specialty pharmacy. And that happens about 75% of the time of all the patients that we get.
Well, I understand you have generated over $700 million in revenue. 2016, I believe. You had an increase of about $40 million over 2016, or that's how much more you're doing right now?
That's about correct. We should do actually just north of that, but yeah.
What is the secret to your success? I mean, that's a lot of volume in a short period of time, because the company started 2009, really hit home in 2010. We're talking about 6.5 or so years. What is the secret to your success?
Sure. Some people think that it's the revenue growth. It's really not the revenue growth. the secret to our success is that we started here in Dallas. We initially brought our model to about 300 physicians here, and today we serve over 15,000 physicians and about 160,000 patients a year. And the only way that you get there is by offering a consistent model that improves its service as you get bigger, instead of the reverse of what you usually see is as a company gets bigger, their service level falls. And so it's all about customer service, but even more than that, it's about instilling a culture inside of the people that work for Senderra. We have about 300 employees today, and they're the ones on the front lines who are going the extra mile for the patient, for the physician, and doing that every single day. You know, the small things is what builds up to the big things.
The physicians you're working with have been using a company prior to Senderra. They had to have gone to somebody. How did you get your foot in the door?
Well, we offered them a comprehensive solution. And so if you think about it, a physician might see 1,000 patients a year. Every one of them is going to be on a different insurance company. They're going to be prescribed a different drug. And so what was happening is the doctor was saying, well, you're with insurance company A and drug B, so I'm going to send you here. And so there's 1,000 different combinations, and that's because no one pharmacy could fill everything. And so really the simplicity of our model is its greatest strength. It's we're going to serve you, physician, at 100%. So send everything to us. It doesn't matter if we can fill the drug or not. We're going to do the right thing for the patient, and so you're going to get the same result every single time, which is hopefully a patient who's been approved on therapy, who can afford it, who is well educated about the side effects, about how you take it, and is ready for a long-term journey towards a healthy outcome. And that's what we try to deliver.
So in other words, you have logistically taken the minutia out of what the physician has to do, and you are the back